how poverty can be eradicated using developmental economics. PMRY is one of the most important landmarks in terms of understanding this is one of the most important factors under the textile division. The government has variety of programs which are helpful in the wage. The percentage of absolute poor in some states are now well below. Good morning and welcome to the fifth session of Challenges Facing the Indian Economy. We were talking about the Poverty Alleviations Program and how they make a difference to the removal of poverty from Indian economy. So moving forward, just let's have a look into the topics that we are going to cover today. These are the topics that it's going to be covered today. The programs to remove poverty, what are the different kinds of programs itself, very important. And we are also going to do a qualitative assessment on how the Poverty Alleviations Program survived in India. This is very important, and this chapter is also trying to lay an emphasis upon the factor that how poverty can be eradicated using developmental economics. So please pay attention in terms of these three factors that will help you to score marks in the examination and also help you to understand a deeper conceptual knowledge altogether. So let's move forward. Now, if you look at the situation currently for the programs to remove the poverty, Government of India had taken several steps in order to remove the poverty in India. Now, if you look here, the programs that were being implemented are now based on the perspective of the 10th five-year plan. So the 10th five-year plan started in the year 2002 to 2007. This was the time period we thought that major employment programs need to be brought in for the development of the country, and that was the important year or an aspect to elevate poverty. And we did understand that one of the major things that we need to bring in order for the reduction of poverty was the employment program, the wage security. So employment and income being proper, being in a place, automatically poverty can be elevated. So the 10th five-year plan started focusing on employment, income and wages. Similarly, if you start seeing here, some of the examples which I would like to give you on the session is the program called as REGP. This program is very important, which is called as the Rural Employment Guarantee Plan, which means to say that we wanted to give the rural youth some guarantee towards the nature of work. So if you are from rural background, if you are from the rural India side, we wanted to give a guarantee towards the work and towards the income so that the rural youths do not go unemployed. So there was a program that was brought in called as the Rural Employment Guarantee Plan, with a minimum days of working and a minimum amount that will be covered for each and every day. Similarly, we also brought out the very famous the PMRY scheme called as the Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana scheme, which is very important. The PMRY is one of the most important landmarks in terms of understanding the employment concepts altogether. This is the Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana, which means to say that under the Prime Minister of India, they are trying to provide some guaranteed program through which employment can be generated and the business can also start moving forward. So this is a very important concept. I would say that it's almost a benchmark in terms of alleviating poverty. Then we also brought in programs like the Swarna Jayanti Sahari Rozgar Yojana, which is also important in terms of elevating people from poverty, giving them some job, giving them some factors of better livelihood. The first programs creating the self-employment opportunities in the rural areas and in the small towns. So we were concentrated in bringing up employment in the rural segment and in the small towns. Moving forward, the khadi and village industries of India. Probably this is one of the very big sector that employs a lot of people. Though the sector is not much organized, though the sector does not have much of a structural system or reforms in place, but yet this is one of the most important factors under the textile division which has been able to implement and give jobs to many people across India. So under this program, one can get the financial assistance altogether from the bank to set up small industries. So the Khadi Commission started providing a small scheme or a plan through which the farmers can get loan from the bank and start up a small and medium enterprise altogether. In fact, I would say this was the first step taken in order to build the SME sector in India, the small and medium enterprises sector in India. The educated, unemployed from the low income families in rural and urban areas can get financial help to set up any kind of business that generates employment under PMRY. So now, under the PMRY, what we wanted to see is that a growth of entrepreneurship in India. There are a lot of people who are educated, they have talent, they have the knowledge, but they don't have the opportunity. So the PMRY scheme was created by the government of India to give the entrepreneurs an opportunity to start up their own companies that might be very small or micro medium enterprises, because of which further employment can be generated. So if they had any ideas of setting up a small hotel or setting up a small industry or any kind of factors, that could be taken as an example in order to generate more and more employment. So PMRY scheme was definitely a very big success and a very big hit in India, because of which we were able to generate a lot of employment factors. Similarly, the Swarna Jayanti Yojana was mainly creating employment for self-sustainability, that is a self-employment and wage employment both in urban areas as well as in rural. Now we had the meaning for each and every one of these policies. The reason is that though we wanted to uplift the poor people in the rural segment, we also wanted to do the same thing for people living in the urban cities. So we came up with this plan called as the Swarna Jayanti Sahakari Yojana, where we started thinking about how to bring on the urban poor people even to the next platform altogether. So that is a very, very important scheme. That's a very, very important plan which tried to think about sustainability, self-employment altogether. Now, moving forward, we also need to understand the different kinds of programs that the government was able to set up for the helping in terms of reduction of poverty. The government has variety of programs which are helpful in the wage employment generation kind thing, and especially for the poor and the unskilled people living in rural areas. So our primary focus itself was that we wanted to uplift the people living in rural areas, provide them with some kind of job, a guaranteed income scheme, so that all the people who are there in the rural sector, especially the unskilled, we can reskill them and start giving them some job. And there are some of the factors of the programs which I would like to discuss today. The first one is the National Food for Work program, a very important thing where we wanted to bring in the factor that food for work. Moment you work, you get food for your stomach. So which means to say that work leads to food. So we wanted to bring in this factor, and that was a very, very important milestone in terms of eradicating poverty. Similarly, the Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana, we wanted to look into this plan also. Why? Because for the villages, for the people living in the small towns, small villages, we wanted to give them some jobs so that unemployment problem can be reduced and poverty can also be eradicated. In the year August 2005, the Parliament has passed a new act provided a guarantee wage employment to every household whose adult volunteer is an unskilled ready for some manual work, and we wanted to give it for a minimum of 100 days in a year. So 1/3 of the days in a year, that is 365 days, we roughly took it as 300 days. 100 days in a year, the government of India planned that we will give them a wage worker, a minimum guarantee for 100 days. There will be employment and there will be wages for that. This act is known as the Rural Employment Guarantee Act of 2005. So the Rural Employment Guarantee Act says that for the 100 days in a year, a male adult worker will be provided with some kind of employment and he will be paid some wages. So this was a very, very important factor that actually led to an employment revolution in India. We were able to harness all the unemployed people in the rural sector, take them forward to the next level, and they were able to get some sort of job so poverty can be elevated in India. The next one is that under this act, all those who were among the poor who were ready to work, this word was very, very interesting. Why? Because in India, there are still many people who are ready to work, who are ready to come forward, reskill themselves or upskill themselves and take up. But unfortunately, what happened is that most of the government policies before August 2005, that is before the 10-year plan, was something that was only trying to look in terms of the rural sector, only in certain particular zones alone. But here we wanted to see that how many people are showing interest towards the work and the nature of work itself. So that is why we brought in this scheme, we brought in this ideology altogether, so that everybody will get benefited and everybody will start working altogether. So that is how we wanted to provide that minimum employment, minimum guarantee of growth altogether. So that worked out very well in all of these areas, and that's how it was implemented in our system. The next one, the third approach that we are going to see in terms of our programs altogether is that we started addressing the minimum amenities that are needed for a person to live. It might be in terms of shelter, it might be in terms of clothing, in terms of food. So, and we were the people who understood this very, very clearly. So that is why India was among the pioneers in the world to envisage through the public expenditure and social consumption. Now, these two words are very, very important. We started putting in money in terms of public expenditure so that it benefits the people. It helps in the social consumption altogether. We wanted that every single citizen of this country will get a minimum benefit, will get a minimum idea of how to live in better living conditions altogether. So we started providing food at subsidized rate. We also started providing education, healthcare, water supply, sanitation, all those factors at the most affordable rate. Now, these are certain facilities, if you think, they are the basic for any human being to live in a country. So we wanted that every citizen should get a benefit of all these factors so that they are able to live a healthy, normal life. Now, the aim of India was that not only to elevate poverty, not only to see that people are brought back from the poor to the rich, but they are brought back to a normal, healthy and an equated life. There should be a balance in the life. So that is why we wanted to see that every facility that is being provided in India is reaching every single citizen. We don't want this to be a prioritized sector. We don't want this to be something only for the exclusive ones. We want this for every single common man of India. Similarly, programs under this approach are expected to supplement, which means they are able to provide a backup to the consumption of the poor and create employment opportunities. We do not want it to just give away free gifts. We do not want it to give away the amenities of programs just like that. We wanted that this social consumption, these programs will lead to employment for the social, for the poor people, and start uplifting them away from the poverty. So this is very, very important for us. And we also understood that at some point of time, the healthcare and the education sector needs to be the topmost priority in the Indian constitution altogether, in the Indian system altogether. So at any point of time, we always kept in all our 5-year plan that healthcare and education becomes a part of the basic necessity altogether. Moving forward. Now, in the other part of the programs, the other sectors that we were trying to cover is that even from the 5th 5-year plan, with an expanded approach of employment opportunities, the poor will not be able to buy themselves for all the services. Why? Because we felt that just by giving in employment, just by making them feel by the factor that yes, employment is available, you will become a part of the society, you will be able to enjoy all the societal benefits, was never taken for granted. Why? Because at that point of time we understood that it is not just the nature of employment, but they have to be supplemented with some sort of minimum standards, with some sort of minimum effort that can make this program even more successful. So that is the reason why we felt that the concept of ration, the concept of providing the basic healthcare or education or any other facility should help the poor to overcome. Because when you start looking at the standard of living that has been constantly rising in India from the last 70-75 years, and it has always been a factor that the poor people are not able to match the standards of living year on year. So with the basic income they are getting, with the basic kind of employment facility which they have, they will definitely not be able to match the standards of rich. So they need some supplement, they need some support, they need some programs that can help them to overcome this difficulty and also need a normal, healthy and a balanced life. So that is the reason we started consumption and investment in the form of food grains, in the form of healthcare, in the form of nutrition, sanitation and all those things. Even now, the Swachh Bharat program is a kind of facility that where we wanted to tell that everybody could get to live in a clean, green city with all kind of sanitation facilities. So the ideology of the Indian government itself was to keep everybody in mind and bring in a common platform so that everybody gets benefited and everybody comes out of poverty altogether. Now, moving forward, some of the other factors of these programs is that the three major programs that were aimed at improving the food and nutrition status of the poor are the public distribution system, as I was talking about the ration, the integrated child development scheme, that is very, very important altogether, and the midday meal scheme. Now, the midday meal scheme or the ration card or the factors of the child development program were all kept in mind because of the young workforce, the developing nation like India. India was making a steady progress in population and our youngster population was going up day by day. There were a lot of children in India who were not initially given support in terms of food and nutrition. So we wanted every school, government schools, to come up with the midday scheme so that they are able to provide a balanced diet to every single child who's studying in that government school. And with that, we were able to support their nutrients, we were able to support their basic life altogether. The concept of ration was not meant only for the poor people, but was meant for every single common man in this society. Because if you go to a retail shop, you might not be able to get the same quantity at a cheaper price. But today, the ration started with an ideology that everybody should get rice, grains and all kind of facility at a very, very subsidized cost. So that's why we bought in the concept of ration altogether. Then we also bought in something called as the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana, Valmiki Ambedkar Yojana. These are some of the attempts on the same direction where we were trying to concentrate in terms of development, in terms of social consumption and in terms of making the public aware of their rights and benefits. Similarly, it might be essential to briefly state that India has always been achieving a satisfactory progress in many of these aspects. So we are a country which is not just coming up with policies and programs and saying that we have achieved status, but we are also a country which has been talking about the progress, which has been talking about the growth aspect as far as possible. So this is one of the best examples to see that how we are being able to make a great progress from a policy, from a program standpoint altogether. Moving forward, poverty alleviation, a critical assessment. Efforts have always been done in the areas to understand since independence, are we able to overcome the poverty? And that's what we have been able to see as a sector, as a segment altogether. The percentage of absolute poor in some states are now well below the national average. So first indicator of growth, we have been able to reduce the levels of poverty. Despite the varieties of approaches, the programs and schemes to alleviate poverty and hunger, we have seen that malnutrition malnutrition, illiteracy, all those programs and the lack of basic amenities continue to remain a common feature. Yes, they are a factor that needs to be looked upon, though the policy towards the poverty alleviation has evolved in a progressive manner. Definitely, yes, over the last 5.5 years, but we have not undergone any radical transformation. We are looking for this word called as radical transformation. Why? Because at some point of time, we want to say India as a country of zero poverty altogether. So we are working towards it, and we will try to develop our system in that angle altogether. Moving forward, you can also find some change in the momentum in the nomenclatures and the names of the program. We have tried to accelerate our program. We have tried to bring in better development, better situations. However, none of them have resulted in any radical change because a lot of things are still under doubt. A lot of assets are still under the control. The change in production, basic amenities, all these features and programs need to be brought under systematic change. And also, the scholars, while assessing these programs, have shown a very, very clear concern that say that the successful implementation in terms of the state, in terms of the individual states, have not been so successful enough on a comparative basis. So there are programs which have been given by the government, by the central government, but when it's going to be observed by the state government, have they been successful enough in implementing those programs? What have been the results? Have all the public been able to get the benefits of these results? Still remain a very big question mark that needs to be addressed. So these are some of the concerns that we are thinking about, that we are going about in terms of the poverty alleviations program. With this, we come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that the session was informative, educative, and meaningful. In the coming session, we are going to look into some of the critical assessment of the programs that help in the poverty alleviation. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay positive forever. Thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session.